Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bala Ramaya, and I'm going to be one of the hosts today on how you can, on a webinar topic on how you can accelerate your identity and access governance modernization, along with Neville Mendonça. And both of us have extensive experience on various identity and access governance technologies. We have gone through the implementation, design, architecture, management. So we have done it in a number of different industry verticals, and hopefully we will be able to provide you with some of our learnings in this particular field. And it's an ever-growing, ever-expanding field, and seems to be the new norm for security definition to start with in terms of the discussion. So what we are going to do is we are going to break this webinar into two sub-parts. One, we are going to talk about the identity and access governance and its importance from a business aspect. And the second is the technical details of this whole space. I'm going to be discussing more from a business side, and Neville will be talking more on the technical side. It would be better served for you if I don't talk technical. He's the main guy you want to talk to if you want to get into technical details. We will go through the slides and we will basically walk through the discussion, and we will have plenty of time for any questions or comments / any discussion that we actually want to do. We do want to have some kind of participation where we can actually talk, and if there is any deeper discussions that need to happen, that can be arranged on a one-on-one basis, or we can actually have a separate call on any topics of interest. So it's an open kind of we want to keep it free flowing. At the same time, we also want to try to make sure that we can cover at least some of the materials that we want to cover. So hence, we would want to actually go through the slides. But if you want to actually interrupt, please feel free to enter your question or stop us, and we can basically try to answer that particular question or accommodate whatever your discussion point is. So happy to get into any specific topic discussion or a specific part of the IAG. But with that, I will let Neville introduce himself first, and then we will get going on the discussion. Neville.
Hi everyone, my name is Neville Mendonça, and I'm located in Tampa, Florida. I have worked in the identity access management domain for almost 20 years now. Have worked on products like the one from Tivoli, the one from SailPoint, and then over here at ISSQUARED, I'm one of the lead architects working on the ORSUS IG product. Yeah, that's all about me.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Neville. And I have extensive experience on the IAG side. I also have a lot of background around networks and security as a whole. I have worked on some very large networks, all the way from backbone engineering to setting up the security, firewalls, segmentation, manufacturing, non-manufacturing, regulated, non-regulated industries. So that's kind of a brief background about me, a lot of the infrastructure background. I do like to do coding as I find time. So that's kind of a passion for me. That's a overall about 20-25 years of experience in the industry doing things, tinkering around with things. With that said, let's go to the first slide. In today's world, the risk around the identity, or risk around access, risk around data, risk around overall business is is just beginning to unravel as more and more systems are basically getting connected. Previously, it was all about IT systems and probably the data, the web servers, the databases that was connected. But now things are moving more into the brick and mortar of businesses. Like if you are a manufacturing system, you basically have the risk of going all the way down to your lines, which could basically get hacked, or you could end up in a scenario where you are not able to manufacture things. Even at homes, you basically have now connected devices, and those are generally built for the purpose of connecting you so that you can control what you want to control, but not from a security point of view. So as more and more devices get connected, the threat landscape just keeps increasing. When we used to talk about identity 2 decades ago, we talked about people and how you can basically control access to people gaining access to the applications and data. That has changed quite a bit from just basically people accessing data to devices accessing data, services basically exchanging data amongst themselves. So the word identity is no longer synonymous to just people or warm bodies behind the access. It's now, it could be a device, it could be a service, it could be an application, it could be many different things that basically takes the shape and form of an identity. These are some of the numbers that we have actually gathered from various different sites, whether it is Gartner, ForgeRock's identity systems, some of the leading providers of software like SailPoint, IBM, and these are real, that there is a lot of threat today that is in and around identity. So the first line of defense for most of the businesses that is actually being looked at today is the identity. So identity has kind of become the firewall for the people who were around 20 years back. Firewall was supposed to be that hard shell which could protect your company, but now it has moved further closer to identity becoming the first line of defense for controlling who gains access to what. So most of the attack vectors that you actually see today, how people penetrate into organizations, it's all coming through some kind of compromise on the identity side, someone basically taking over someone's username, password, or basically some critical administrative accounts not being managed properly, or someone basically scraping the password off of the memory. Many different ways depending on how smart the attack vector is, state-owned, not state-owned, private, groups of people, or it's just script kiddies who are actually trying to prove a point. So there are different sets of people, different attack vectors, but identity kind of seems to be the center point from where the whole thing starts, somehow gaining access to the data through some compromised account. So that basically has put identity in the center of discussion around the business. It is no longer a part of an IT discussion. It's more in the CISO's mind on the identity side. So a lot of the organizations are shifting the identity discussion into the security aspect if they have already not done it. A lot of the identity and access governance teams are now moving into the security space. The CISO is now taking over the identity and access governance teams. So this is becoming very clear that in the next at least 5 years or so, there is going to be more and more investments in the security space, and very specifically in the identity space. So going to the next slide, what we need to understand is what are the core challenges that basically identity and access governance has today, and what are all the things that we need to look at from a business perspective. Most of the times, the identity landscape is marred with the complexity of managing the various contracts, which could come in the form of external people coming into the organization, or even employees, contractors, temps, which basically gets onboarded through HR or some form of an HR process. How do you actually make sure that people who need to gain access, they are the only people who gain access? How do you control access proliferation? What happens when people move from one part of the organization to the other? There are a lot of manual processes, and a lot of organizations, when they automate those processes, they want to take the manual processes and automate it because that's the easiest way to do it, so that they have electronic records. But is that the right thing to do? Is that the right ROI on the investments? Is it better to redo the processes? And when you're talking about processes, it's not the IT in a lot of cases that owns the process. You have to bring in the business, you have to bring in the application teams. Unfortunately, identity and access governance is unlike putting a firewall on the network, where the IT team decides that we want to put a firewall, they buy a firewall, put a network cable on this side, put a network cable on that side, and a bunch of configurations, and there you go. Unfortunately, identity is not like that. IT has very little control over the processes, which are basically governed by, say, the HR, the global sourcing group, the partners group, the business itself, how they basically want to control access to their data. IT has very little say on those processes and workflows, which keeps changing, and IT has to evolve, has to have tools, have to have processes in place to be able to support that. So a lot of the manual processes, as the company grows in size, becomes more and more and more difficult for the business to manage, and hence IT basically comes under pressure, and things start slipping, falling through the cracks, and hence increases the risk to the business. And that basically is the risk that becomes critical when there is a hack, and you understand that, hey, we forgot to patch, hey, we forgot to change the password on an admin account, someone logged into the admin account and left it running. So those types of risks increase as IT comes under pressure because of under budgeting, or the processes are changing, there are not enough tools, there is not enough support to IT from the business, or there is a big disconnect between the IT and the business. And eventually these lead to the security breaches. Once a breach happens, then everything basically becomes, we need to fix this, let's pour in a lot of money. And then it goes, the dial swings the other way, where there is a lot of money coming in and you are given very little time to implement. Then you are under the gun to implement something. Then you start, most of the times it gets into, hey, I'm going to buy the shiniest tool available on the market today, and I'm going to implement it, and it's going to become, it's going to solve the world hunger, which generally doesn't happen. And then it goes into a spiral. So those are all some of the challenges that we have actually seen in the identity and access governance space. Unfortunately, these projects are very big. It needs a lot of care and feed from the business. The business needs to be aligned. There has to be an investment. The executives need to have a stake, a skin in the game. And some of those, if checked, this could basically reduce the workload on the IT side, improve the security, reduce the risk. So lots of things that could basically be won just by having a good handshake between the IT, security, and the business working together. And next slide. From a modernization point of view, it's better to just basically automate a lot of the manual tasks that are being done from a lifecycle point of view. A lot of the controls that you actually have today to provide access to applications, groups, data, file shares, those are better served if they are handled by the business directly rather than the IT. From a governance point of view, if you basically have a single pane of glass that allows you to look at what's happening across the organization, that basically reduces the risk because you have a whole view of what's happening rather than bits and pieces that you have to actually stitch together. Now, this is a utopian dream to have something like that where you can see everything that's happening in your organization in a single pane of glass. I can tell you there is no such tool that exists that ties everything together, but that's an ideal state scenario. As many as those applications, as many of those um, security things that you can bring together, you'll basically be better served. And once you are basically moving a lot of the stuff, automating it and moving it towards the business, it automatically improves the productivity. So we have actually seen when the business is making decisions on access controls, when the business is actually providing access and not IT and not opening tickets, uh, suddenly the business basically has a stake in the ground and they control the data, and there is very little friction that happens between business and IT, and business actually feels the IT teams are supporting them. And we have actually seen the IT is seen in more positive light, and they basically get better budgets to improve further processes and controls. Next slide. So what do we actually, when we actually talk about identity governance, what is it that we actually see from an ISSQUARED point of view? Now, if you talk to someone else, even on this call, if you talk to Neville, he will probably have a different view. Again, this is a perspective of one person over the other, but generally as a rule of thumb, we can all agree that when we talk about identity and access governance, it's not just one piece. There are a lot of different pieces that make up identity and access governance. It could start all the way from single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, authorization for access data, the life cycle of identities, which could be all your people identities, whether they are onboarded through HR or they are onboarded through some other process, whether they are external business partners. You also have another set of identities which are non-user identities, which could be your service accounts, test accounts, training accounts, your devices that are actually connecting and performing activities. So all those, how do you control access that these identities have? How do you control the life cycle of them? Do you actually see them coming on, getting onboarded, offboarded? Do you actually have things like recertifications of these accounts? I bring up a new application, I request 5 accounts, and then that application sunsets. Are those accounts still lingering in your system? Do you track those accounts? How many of those accounts actually exist across your infrastructure? So all those will be bundled into some kind of a lifecycle management for user and non-user. Do you guys have roles? How much fine-grained access to the roles do you guys have? Uh, how is the policy enforced? Is the business policy directly translated into an IT policy? Are there workflows? Do you provide a self-service to the business so that you can actually take the IT out of the daily adding people to groups, removing members from the groups, adding people to roles? Are those automated? So when we talk about identity governance, we believe all these are the core items that needs to be handled for a full identity governance system to work. Next slide. So from ISSQUARED, we have built over the years that we have actually spent on different technologies that we have used. We still implement those. We have actually built a product on the identity and access governance side, the what we call as the ORSUS IAG, which basically solves a lot of the problem. And as I said, no one single tool today solves everything. We believe it is very competitive. We believe that we have done a excellent job in identifying gaps across a lot of the tools that exist in the market today, and we have solved some of those problems. And as we progress on the the life cycle of this particular tool, we have a lot of exciting additions that are basically going to be coming in. But in a nutshell, what we basically put in the previous slide are all the things that we are bringing as part of the IAG umbrella on the ORSUS side. We have an SSO, we have MFA, we manage the life cycle of both user and non-user entities. We do role management, we do MFA, we do PIM-PAM or some aspects of it. So these are some of the core features that we actually bring into the tool. But again, tool is not the end all. The first on the IAM and IAG side, even if you're looking for a solution, first it's the business processes that needs to be understood, process needs to be built, workflows need to be built, and then you should basically look at a tool that you actually want to implement. Next slide. We believe that a tool in an ideal world should basically have one platform and should basically support all the use cases that exist. Now, does it really happen? Probably not. Will it ever happen? We will get closer to it. It's always, you want to be perfect, but you always want to get closer to perfection as much as possible. So what we believe, one platform, if not all use cases, you should have most of the use cases covered. So you should have full automation, you should have transparency, you should have good governance, you should have a self-service, you should have centralized recertifications, you should have full access control. If you basically can pick all these aspects, put processes, policies around these, and then put a tool that can manage it, then you basically have a very good access governance, and you basically will make your business really happy. Next slide. Why identity access governance on the ORSUS platform? We believe that we basically have a very good story around security, business agility, improving the efficiency, because we have most of the stuff that we actually discussed in the previous slide. We do have a self-service portal. We do have access control. We do provide a full life cycle. We do provide automation, which is, again, there is no single tool on the identity space which is without coding. You do have to code. Same with our product. You do have to code. But we have tried to eliminate a lot of the mundane tasks that require coding in some of the tools as being pre-built in the tool, at least from a basic functionality point of view. If it is really complex business rules that you have to encapsulate, you will have to actually code. So we basically have a good story around this. Now, in the interest of time, I think I would want to hand off to Neville on this call, and he is basically going to walk through the actual the technical aspect of the identity and access governance. Neville, all over to you.
All right. ORSUS. First of all, the name. In Greek, it means the beginning. ORSUS IAG is the product we have built ground up. So ORSUS IAG, basically it enables you to manage, to centrally manage identities and their access across different applications. And these applications could be either applications in the cloud or on-prem applications. It lets you manage the identity lifecycle, automate the repetitive tasks that you perform, provisioning, deprovisioning, the birthright access, ad hoc request, streamlining this request via workflows, things like password resets. ORSUS comes with a self-service portal, so which enables end users to perform ad hoc tasks such as requesting access, resetting the passwords. So it lets managers, access gatekeepers to go to the same portal and approve, reject requests. Access certifications and reviews. So managers or end users or this access gatekeepers can go to the self-service portal and perform attestation reviews and completions, where it lets you build business roles. Business roles which are mapped to entitlements across applications within your application landscape. These roles can then be dynamically assigned to people via based on the user attributes, or they can be requested and connected via workflows. So you have the approvals and other processes in place. You can set up policies, different types of policies, provisioning policies, which can give birthright access, then password policies, and so on. Attestation processes can be configured. We have the continuous attestations, which are recurring attestations, or you can have ad hoc attestation campaigns that you can run as and when desired. So ORSUS gives a robust set of governance controls. For example, workflows, certifications, recertifications, and so on, to improve the security posture of your organization. So ORSUS, like it aggregates the data, all the data, like your identities that come from your workforce systems. It aggregates the accounts and the access these identities have. It correlates all that information in one place. And all this information can be reported upon. Also, whatever transactions the end users perform, like submitting requests, the managers going and approving requests, all these transactions are logged within a database. So you can pull various types of reports, which come very handy for auditors. And also, if you want to do forensic analysis, this data comes very, very handy. There are out-of-the-box reports that you can pull, and then you can also use your reporting tools and pull custom reports of the SQL database. So what you see over here is the landscape of ORSUS IAG. So on the left-hand side, you have your workforce, your human capital management system. So this is where users get onboarded by the HR. So this is the source of truth for identity profiles and attributes. Okay. So on the rightmost side, you have your applications, your application landscape. It could be directories, it could be like Active Directory, LDAP, it could be your databases, it could be your applications, your applications in the cloud, your on-prem applications, or your infrastructure. So this is where users get access. So this access can then be reconciled or aggregated into ORSUS, and then correlated with the identities that come from workforce. Now you have one place where you get to see all your users and what access they have, whether they have privileged access. And then you can implement the various processes. The hexagons that you see, this is the feature set of ORSUS. These are all the processes that we talked about. And I'm going to go in the details in the following slides. Now, how do we connect to these applications that you see on the right? So we have connectors that come with ORSUS. What are the different types of connectors? First of all, you have connectors that come out of the box. These are connectors. We have around 20 plus connectors for the widely used applications within the organizations. Then we have generic connectors. Generic connectors are those that support work with applications that have standard APIs or protocols, APIs such as web service APIs. It may be REST APIs, SOAP APIs, or it could be LDAP protocols or JDBC, right? And then you may have applications, your legacy applications, or not necessarily legacy, but those applications that have proprietary APIs or SDKs. So for which ORSUS has a connector framework. So you can use this framework and you can develop custom connectors that can talk to these applications and automate the provisioning and deprovisioning of access. And then you have those applications which have no APIs in any shape or form, for which we have the ticketing connectors. This is where you have your processes in ORSUS, all your processes automated and streamlined in ORSUS, but the final step where you provision or deprovision of access, so that is converted into a ticket in a ticketing system. This ticket has all the details listed. And then this ticket is assigned to the application administrators, and then the application administrators can manually go and perform those actions on these applications, come back, close the ticket, and then that closes the workflow within ORSUS. So let's talk about account lifecycle management. So you have your workforce, user gets onboarded. So the user needs access to the various applications day one. So this user, the newly onboarded user, the profile flows into ORSUS. So this profile, then you have within ORSUS policies defined. What access should this user get? And these policies are defined based on user attributes that come from HR. Based on users' roles, it could be users' job title. So we define the different policies. These are called birthright policies. So automatically the user gets added to the defined applications or systems, and then the application access is automatically granted. The next thing that can happen is user changes roles. So the attributes change over a period of time. So this attribute changes again flow into ORSUS, and then based on the policies defined, access can be removed or new access can be granted to the user. So this end-to-end process is can be fully automated using ORSUS IAG. Then the last thing, and which is a very important thing, is access removal. What happens when a user gets terminated? So again, the data flows into ORSUS, and then all the access that the user has gets automatically deprovisioned or removed. There are certain use cases that we do receive, such as expedited terminations. So those are handled by the application as well. So we work with the HR, and we agree upon an attribute that they set for expedited termination. So the moment we see that value, like the access gets removed immediately. So what are the different types of accounts that can be managed? First of all, user accounts. It could be, and these are the regular accounts that are given to employees, contractors, vendors, customers, partners, etc. Then you can also manage non-user accounts. This could be service accounts, admin accounts, shared accounts, training accounts, and so on. So there are certain things that we have templatized within ORSUS. For example, requesting a service account. While requesting a service account, you can attach a template to the service account. And this template will define certain properties within that service account. It may define what the prefix should be, what the suffix should be, what workflow should be invoked when this service account request is being processed. What the recertification or attestation process should be. How often should this should this account be recertified. Other things are like the ownership of the service account. This is critical. So whenever you create a service account, the ownership is defined. But what happens when the owners leave the organization? You can't go and disable the service accounts or these non-user accounts, because it may bring down your applications. So transferring the ownership to the correct individual. So these are certain things that we have inbuilt within the product. So let's talk about groups, roles, and entitlements. The product does, ORSUS does allow you to create groups, to modify the group metadata, to delete the groups, as well as manage the membership within the groups, add users to the group, remove users from the group. You can build business roles within ORSUS, and these business roles you can connect them with groups across multiple applications, and these business roles can then be assigned to the users dynamically based on certain user attributes, or they can be requested by the users by going to the self-service portal, and then the workflow then streamlines the process behind the scenes. I'll take a little bit of time to explain a little bit on entitlements, because this is important. We have a cool feature in ORSUS that we have implemented. Say suppose you have a document management system, right? And this document management system, say for a discussion, it has three types of access rights. One is the administrator, the other one is say the author, and the third one, say the reader. Now this access rights, say they are mapped to a directory like your Active Directory, and then for a user to get access to get the appropriate access within this document management system, the users need to get added to the groups on the directory. Imagine the end user experience, because Active Directory normally would have like thousands of groups, going and searching through those groups and finding the correct group. So we have built a feature in ORSUS where you can create applications. So where you can define an application called the document management system. Then you can have entitlements associated with that application. The entitlements could be something familiar, that something that the end users are familiar with. Say administrator, say an author, say a reader. And behind the scenes, you can connect these entitlements to groups on your directory. So when users go to the self-service portal, they see the application called a document management system. They don't have to go through like thousands of groups. They choose the groups on that application that they want a request access. Behind the scenes, there is a workflow connected, and this workflow can be customized based on the user based on the business requirements, and then access is granted. When the access is granted, ORSUS knows that it has to actually add the user on the directory and not the application itself. So that's one cool feature that exists in the tool. We do have a self-service portal where users can request access, place ad hoc requests for groups, for roles. These groups or roles can be dynamically assigned based on user attributes. SOD policies can be set up both at the group level as well as the role level. You can set up gatekeepers, which could be business owners or system owners on groups as well as roles. And these are the users who would be doing approvals or your attestations. Right? Then there are some advanced features that come with ORSUS. So there is a feature for rolling back changes. Right? So you go to a group and accidentally you delete group members from that group or from that role, right? So there is a feature where you can roll back your changes. So it goes back to the state it was before you perform the delete. pre-approval of access. This is where a user needs access on a particular date, say for implementing some change, right, for a particular duration. So the user can go and request access right away. The request goes for a pre-approval to whoever is configured in the workflow. Once the request is approved, then the access is not granted right away. Access is granted only for that duration for which the user requested, the start date and the end date and the time. So another feature that we have implemented is around creation of dynamic groups. So for example, you may have a distribution list within the organization. And this distribution list, say, are based off your departments within the organization or the locations within the organization or your cost centers. So you can go to ORSUS and build a rule. You can provide those filters that, okay, create distribution groups for me based on departments or based on locations. So there is a group builder where you can go and define those rules. So once you define those rules, ORSUS goes and automatically creates all those groups on the managed application, whichever application it is. And in addition to doing that, it also manages the membership within those groups. Now, say like in a few days, a new department gets onboarded. So that the group corresponding to that department automatically gets created on the managed application, as well as the membership within that newly created group is automatically managed. So we've seen these requirements at a few places where with other tools, a lot of customizations had to be done, but this comes like out of the box with ORSUS, and it is very easy to use this feature. Okay, now let's talk about request management. There are two parts to it. First of all, the self-service portal where the end users go and request access. And then the second part is like how you automate or streamline the business process that is connected with the request. So let's talk about the capabilities of the self-service portal. So end users can go and request new accounts. They can request access to groups, access to roles, access to entitlements. End users can request non-user accounts that we discussed, service accounts and so on. They can go to the self-service portal and track the status of the request, where it is in the workflow. The managers or the access gatekeepers can go to the same portal and approve reject requests. End users can go reset passwords for accounts they own. Help desk can go to the same portal and reset passwords on behalf of others. Delegation of responsibilities. So if someone is going on vacation, the task can be delegated to another person for a specific duration. One thing to note over here, this delegation within ORSUS is more granular. So for example, you have a person who gets a request to approve, reject request, and also gets request to recertify access or do the attestations. So the person can say like can delegate the approval process or approval task to person A and recertification task to person B. So that capability is there within the tool. Now, as far as the workflows are concerned, so workflows, we have a workflow designer, which is easy to use, but you can design complex workflows using it. So you can set up multi-level approvals. There are a lot of default workflows that come with the application, and these serve the common use cases that we have seen in the market. You can set up approvals, you can send notifications within the workflows, those controls are available. You can have flows like if statements, switch statements. You can build those flows by dragging and dropping controls. Then there are some advanced features like, and these are especially for integrations with other systems. For I'll give you one example. So a person requests access to some elevated group, and you want to make sure people getting access to this group go through the necessary trainings before getting access to those groups, right? So you can have controls defined within workflows that can talk to your LMS system via REST or SOAP APIs, where the REST API is called, a training is assigned to the user, and then the next REST API is called, and the request is, the training status is polled. And the moment the user goes and completes the training, the workflow moves to the next step and provisions access. So there are some cool features that are available within workflows. Access governance. Access governance, let's talk about recertifications. First, recertification campaigns. There are two ways to do this. There are continuous recertifications you can set up, or you can run ad hoc recertification campaigns. What can be recertified? Accounts can be recertified, groups, group metadata, role metadata, entitlement metadata, or their membership can be recertified. You can define recertification workflows, right? It's the same workflows that you connect with your recertification process. You can send automatic reminders. You can send escalations if someone is not completing something on time. Then escalations can be set up. The certification owner can monitor the progress of the recertification. See where it is, like there are like visualizations available that shows you like percentages of the recertification that were completed and what is still pending, who needs to complete them, and so on. Automated remediations. So now if there are requests to revoke access, then the remediation process can be automated as well. So informed review decisions. So a lot of data is presented to the reviewer. So the reviewer can make informed decisions while recertifying access. There are out-of-the-box reports and visualizations that I talked about that are available to track the status, or like after the recertification is done, you want to go back and check the actions that were taken during that process. Then those reports are available. Notification templates, these are like email templates that come with the product and which can be customized. Separation of duties can be set up both at the role level or at the group level as well. Just-in-time access is something we talked about, the pre-approved access where users request access, but then they get access only during that particular window for which they have requested access. Handle violations, orphan accounts. This is critical. So when we run the reconciliations or the aggregations, when we aggregate accounts and access, we find that there are a lot of accounts that don't get correlated from with the owner profile. So we can pull reports, and then those reports come very handy for data cleanup activities. So this is the connector framework. On the left-hand side, what you see, these are connectors that connect to the authoritative sources of data. These are your identities. This could be your HR system or other authoritative sources of data or identities. So these we call as inbound connectors. This is where we pull the information inside ORSUS, like the identity information. There are different types of connectors available. You can connect to applications with APIs, databases, or load the data via flat files. And on the right-hand side, these are provisioning connectors. And these I talked about in my earlier slide. The applications could be on-prem, or they could be in the cloud, or they could be applications without any APIs. Right? Audits and reporting. There are two types of reports in general. There are summary reports, which tell you who has access to what resources or which entitlements, who has privileged access, group reports, group membership reports, role membership reports. And then there are transactional reports. These are transactions that were performed within ORSUS. These are like reports will tell you who requested access, who approved those requests, and so on. All the data, so there are many reports that come out of the box, but all the data goes in a SQL database, and then you can use your own reporting tools and pull reports, the kind of reports you need. These are some advanced features that are available, like advanced workflows. Some of these we talked about, right? The advanced features that are available, these workflows can be connected to request for non-user accounts or regular accounts, and so on, groups, entitlements, recertifications. There are default workflows, and the workflows you can customize. There are fine-grained access control, separation of duties, role or attribute-based access control, just-in-time access. These are things we talked about. Simplified processes. There is a self-service UI, reconciliations, templates. We talked about these things. Security controls. The tool does support multi-factor authentication, but can also be integrated with other third-party SSO platforms, Okta or Ping, and so on. There are robust compliance controls, recertifications, and so on. Integrations, we talked about the connectors. There are 20 plus pre-built connectors, and then there are other types of connectors like custom connectors that you can build, support on-prem as well as cloud applications. So deployment topologies, you can have an on-prem deployment as well as you can have a cloud deployment of ORSUS.